Video recording. I got episode 45 online. Monetization was surprisingly easy, but it takes about 24 hours, so heads up for anybody else who wants to experiment with monetization with a channel that has 24 followers. So my findings so far, I'm just gonna double check. Monetization is still enabled on a gay video about gay things. I have confirmed that it does not show up in restricted mode. I also have 2 other videos that don't show up in restricted mode. More on that later. There are a few things I forgot to cover in the previous video. One is the question of whether YouTube or anyone at YouTube had malicious intent in setting up these filters, which I will also get back to, sort of nesting the arguments in this video. The other thing is a few other major points of concern with the implications of restricted mode. Creators are not notified in any way that their videos are restricted. There's no way to look at a video and see whether it falls under restricted mode. The only way to tell is to turn on restricted mode yourself, look at your channel, and take note of what's not there. For some people, this might be 1 or 2 videos out of hundreds. For some people, it's basically their entire channel. The other thing is there's no appeals process. There's no way to tell YouTube, hey, you made a mistake. This is a perfectly innocent video that is meant to be informative for children. There's no way to ask someone to take a second look about whether your video should be restricted. This, I think, is an unacceptable state, and I hope that YouTube intends to change that as soon as they can hire new people to handle it. Now, on the topic of malicious intent, I want to respond in particular to a recent video by YouTube user Marina Shut Up.
YouTube apparently issued an apology today saying, "Sorry for all the confusion with restricted mode. Some videos have been incorrectly labeled, and that's not right. We're on it." The fact that pretty much any video labeled with gay or lesbian or LGBT or anything like that has systematically been removed from this age-restricted mode tells me that this wasn't an accident, this wasn't a mistake, this was literally a system created to filter out any LGBT-related content. And the fact that YouTube's response was basically like, oops, didn't mean to do that, is just deeply misleading and kind of sketchy.
Marina has been doing YouTube a lot longer than me, and I'm sure she has a lot more personal experience with the relationship YouTube has to its creators. I'm responding to her in particular because I admire her work. I think she does a really great job, and I think she's a very credible source for that criticism to come from. I also want to say I'm giving YouTube the benefit of the doubt in my following argument, which they are by no means entitled to. I am a pretty big Google fan and Google Properties fan, so I tend to lean toward the side of giving them the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean that's necessarily justified. That doesn't mean that other people are wrong for not reaching for the most charitable possibility. But I think it's important to really think this through because algorithmic filtering is the issue here, and algorithms don't behave like humans. So while it would unambiguously be a malicious act for a human to have deliberately gone through and removed everything that had the word gay in it, it does not necessarily follow that somebody did that because the algorithm does that. So here are a few possible ways that this could have come about without anyone at YouTube specifically saying we should exclude LGBTQIAAP+ content from media presented to children. They could have repurposed somebody else's filtration algorithm. For example, Google, their parent company, notably does not autocomplete for many LGBTQIAAP+ related terms because they are very frequently associated with literally porn. This is a problem. Google needs to work on that. That's something that needs to be fixed, but it is not something that Google did because they are anti-gay. It is not a homophobic gesture on the part of the company. It is an emergent property of the distributed homophobia of the entire civilization. The fact that queer content is coded as sexual makes that intervention necessary. And it is a harder challenge to build a search engine that can distinguish the word lesbian in the context of women loving women and the word lesbian in the context of pornographic media for male consumption. They could have had their filter learn what keywords to filter from the content that was already flagged as mature, which has the same problem in that existing cultural mores and prejudices get sucked up into the filter. Or they could have just complied with some pre-existing list of terms appropriate to block for children, which would be careless and irresponsible, but would not reflect the same kind of malice as writing their filtration system from scratch and deliberately excluding LGBT keywords. If any of these things are the case, that does not make it okay. This is something they need to fix. But the thing is, sincerely concerned engineers working hard to solve a very difficult problem looks a lot like apathetic or homophobic engineers blowing off a trivial problem. My battery just died. Audio recording. Genuinely concerned engineers working hard to solve a difficult problem looks a lot like apathetic or homophobic engineers blowing off an easy problem. So if we believe that this problem is trivial, if we don't acknowledge that it's a difficult engineering problem, and if we assume malice on the part of YouTube's engineers, we're going to run out of activist energy to push for this fix real fast. Now, I'm more than happy to admit that just as there are non-trivial risks in believing malice where there is none, there are also risks in believing good faith when there is malice. This isn't a Pascal's wager kind of problem. There's no right answer just on the basis of one side being consequence-free. And again, I'm a big Google fan. I have a blind spot here. I might be weighing up the different elements wrong in this situation, but I do think it's important when talking about any large-scale, practical activist effort to think carefully about who is an enemy and who just needs to be pushed to be an ally. I know that's not something anybody wants to do in their personal life, but on a systematic scale, it's really necessary. So about my restricted videos. Obviously, episode 45 was restricted. That was the point. And a reminder, it did not lose monetization because, as I hypothesized in episode 45, being restricted is not the same thing as being labeled mature. Episode 27, Punk Turns 40, was also restricted. This episode is subtitled, and in the first sentence I say the word shit. That's probably why. Episode 13, Exhaustion, Indifference, and Executive Dysfunction, is also restricted. I have no clue why. There is nothing objectionable in that video. Do they restrict videos for being too boring for kids? Anyway, if there's anything else you think I should cover on this topic, let me know. This is really interesting to dig into and I'm enjoying making videos about it. This is the third one I will have put up today. Oh, and like, share, and subscribe. Bye. This is the notes for this episode.